I'm Joyce Tischler, your worship associate for this service titled Aging Well. I've tried to consciously embrace each season and each stage of my life. And now I'm embracing what I see as, I hope, a long final act. Being an old woman, an elder, a crone. I'm thankful that I've reached the age of 72. Not everyone gets that gift. I've been thinking a lot about what it means to me to age well. Perhaps part of aging well is shedding what society tells us about aging. Our society sends us annoying messages that to be young is desirable and to be old is to be feeble and useless. I like Jane Fonda. I've always liked Jane Fonda, but her way of dealing with age is not my way. Botox, fillers, surgeries, that doesn't feel right to me. I want to embrace my age. I want to look this age. Okay, maybe not this age, but. In the past, if someone told me that I looked 10 years younger than I am, I took it as a compliment. Now I'm not so sure. Is looking younger superior to looking old? Why can't we admire the way old people look? So the question I'm noodling now is, how do I want to define and experience this part of my life? Who do I want to be when I grow old? One thing I want to be is less stuck in anger. I want to let go of arguing with other people over and over again in my head. To that end, earlier this week, I was watching an interview with Sylvia Boorstein. She's the Buddhist teacher and author, and she's one of the co-founders of Spirit Rock Meditation Center in Northern California. And she's delightful. What resonated with me the most was when she said that when someone or something upsets her, she says to herself, "Sweetheart, you're in pain. Take a breath." I love that. I want to be kinder to myself. Honestly, none of us knows what the next however many years we have will bring us. It's uncharted territory. And for me, the possibilities are exciting, but they're also scary. Exciting because for the first time in forever, by next summer, I'm going to retire, and I will have total control of my own time. Whew, what a luxury that's going to be. To the extent that I can write this chapter, I hope that I'm going to be brave enough to accept the good and the bad of advanced aging with at least some grace and humor. And to quote our beloved Dolores Hurd, who's looking up, I want to be grateful for everything I have. I have some lofty goals for this next chapter. Books I want to read, subjects that I want to study, like astronomy, mythology, early American history, world history. I want to do some of the things that I never made time for when I was younger, when I was a workaholic, building and maintaining a far too busy career. Now I want to cherish time. To quote Ram Dass, I want to be here now. At the same time, now I'm afraid of things that I never was afraid of before. I fear the inevitable loss of physical abilities, despite whatever efforts I may make to keep moving and stay flexible. Blacking out and breaking my ankle in 2024 and spending 2 months in a wheelchair in chronic pain gave me an unwelcome clue about what the future may hold. Loss of physical functions, pain, and depression. Well, I recovered from that injury, but it was a gut punch, and it was a wake-up call. I worry that there's going to be a time when recovery is not going to happen, and that makes me feel sad and gets me off balance. I worry that I will lose control of my mind, and that's perhaps my darkest fear. So I return to the question, how do I age well? I look around me in this room and I see some role models for aging well. I see elder musicians who are very talented, singers, social advocates. I see elders who are working to protect democracy, the environment, and other people. I see friendships, and I see people who are supporting each other through the hard times. Okay, maybe I'm overthinking this. Maybe I just need to make a list for aging well. I'm a list maker. I do it every day. So this list is going to include get out of bed late. Sit on the couch with the dogs and drink a hot cup of tea. Plan something fun for the day. Get outside, walk. Don't overcommit. Put all the things I'm afraid of into a box and label that box Worry Box. Open that box when I need to, but don't live there. Hug Mark Ave, kiss the cat, feed the chickens, and if someone pisses me off, say to myself, sweetheart, you're in pain. Take a breath.
Our reading today is Body by Lillian Morrison, who writes, I have lived with it for years, this big cat, developed an affection for it. Though it is aging now, I cannot abandon it, nor do I want to. I would love to throw it about in play, but must be careful. It cannot summon that agile grace of old. Yet it's really pleasant to be with. Familiar, faithful, complaining a little, continually going about its business, loving to lie down. In 2008, I chaperoned a youth pilgrimage from First Unitarian Church in Portland to Hungary and Romania to see the homeland of some of our Unitarian ancestors. We began in Budapest and stayed there with homestay families from the big Unitarian church there, before traveling to a small village in the old Transylvanian region of what is now Romania. It was a fascinating trip, made partially so by the history and partially by seeing such different values in different cultures. One of the most interesting things was hearing about my host, a 55-year-old woman who lived alone, had, until recently, cared for her elderly mother in her apartment. When her mother got to the point of needing care, she moved in with her daughter, which is a very common thing in that part of the world. But the thing that I found deeply unsettling is that there was only a tiny standing elevator that led up to her third or fourth floor apartment. And so when her mother moved in with her, she did not leave the apartment until she died 9 months later. For me, this seemed sad. Such a complete loss of independence from the freedom to go do things. For my host, whose name was Morena, it seemed horrifying that Americans who need care most often get it someplace other than their children's houses. How could you not care for your own relatives? Neither of these values are bad, but they often conflict with one another. All of us on the group were shocked when we rode on the subway, an underground circle through Budapest, and realized that of all of the subway stops, exactly one was handicapped accessible. What does that do for public transportation when only one stop in a circle is accessible? It means you can ride it in a loop like a Ferris wheel without any view, but you can't actually get anywhere. In his book, Being Mortal, Atul Gawande, a surgeon and author, writes of his parents, who both immigrated to the United States from India separately, and the rest of his father's family who remained. His grandfather Sitaram Gawande was a farmer in a small village 300 miles inland from Mumbai, and he lived with his extended family on his family farm that he had worked all his life. At over 90, he was revered by his family because of his age, not in spite of it. He was consulted on all important matters, and when people visited, they bowed and touched his feet. His children, except the one who moved to the United States to be a doctor, all lived nearby with their families, and he lived with another son and his family. If he lived in the United States, he almost certainly would have been put into some kind of nursing home because he wasn't safe on his own. But because of his constant family support, he lived his life as he wanted to. And this took a lot of effort on his family's part. Every morning, he went out to go look at his land, his 200 acres or so, and every evening, he rode his horse on his entire acreage. But because he wasn't safe on his horse, somebody had to ride behind him and keep a hold of him on the horse. This went on until he was 110. He finally died after he fell on a bus when he wanted to go into town and conduct some business. What Papa wanted, Papa got, and so a daughter-in-law or grandkids went with him, but he fell anyway, getting off the bus, and probably died of a subdural hematoma a couple of days later. Atul Gawande writes that this is how many of us would like to go, living our best lives until the end, surrounded by loved ones. But he also writes that his 80-year-old uncle never got to control the land he lived on his whole life, never got to be the one in charge. He writes that the very nature of old age has changed drastically in our lifetimes. In 1790, only 2% of the population was over 65. Now it's about 17%. And the guess is that it's going to be 35% by 2050. Elders were revered for their wisdom and experience. Now we ask Google or AI, and we ask our teenagers to help us with our computers. In a world where all the facts in the world are in our pockets, and where our very world has changed so rapidly, the experience of our elders doesn't seem to count for as much. But the major reason that Gawande lists for changed attitudes towards caring for our own is that we don't want to live in the same way anymore. We don't think it's fair that the youngest daughter is assigned to care for her parents and never leave home, the way Emily Dickinson did. Most of us choose to move away from where we've grown up, at least for a while. People sell their homes. They don't keep them in the family for generations. In an era of competing values, Americans in particular have landed hard on the side of independence. People of all genders are getting married later, living independently, going to college. And it's true that there is a bit of a backlash against that now for a variety of reasons. It is far less affordable now for young people. Folks with engineering degrees are having a hard time finding jobs. The average age of first-time homebuyers is now 40. That is up from 33 5 years ago. It's getting less and less affordable for everyone. In 2023, 40% of people between the ages of 18 and 30 lived with a parent. It is interesting to wonder if the economic realities of our time will send us back to a time when generations lived together throughout their lives. As a minister who has a fair amount of contact with elders, something I've long wished is that we had programs that matched elders living in their own homes with single parents with kids who are willing to help out in exchange for discounted rent. I remember a 90-something congregant in a previous congregation who rattled around in the 4-bedroom house that she raised her family in. She didn't want to live with her daughter, but I often wished she wasn't alone. Two other factors that I think are especially applicable to our modern era. The first is that we are increasingly isolated. Article after article describes our increasing loneliness and isolation. But Amanda White, LPC, writes in an article called "When Convenience Costs Connection" that even before the pandemic, we were opting out of interaction. Groceries delivered to our cars so we don't have to interact with a checker. Food delivered to our porches so we don't even have to answer the door. Banking online. People are so messy and inconvenient, let's come up with as many ways as possible to avoid dealing with them. But as White writes, every innovation promises to give you back your time, your peace, and your control. And they do, but there's a cost, the opportunity for connection. Real-life connection, she writes, is messy and unpredictable because human beings are messy and unpredictable. It is one of the few things in our life that technology has not been able to optimize. Connection requires risk. There is no way around this. It requires exposure. The only way to know someone is to let them know you. Now, I admit that I am one of those weird people who really likes connection with strangers. It was the hardest part of the pandemic to me, is that I missed interacting with strangers. It drove me batty. Jesse is nodding really hard. Give me a chat with the person behind the counter. I have come out of the bank and told my children about the woman that I interacted with and her kids, and that her kid wasn't going to go to college because he was going to do a plumbing internship with his dad. And they're like, "You were in there 3 minutes." And it's one of the things that I really love about my job, is that I get to interact with all of you messy, imperfect human beings with my own messy, imperfect self. But overall, people are backing away from messy interactions with strangers. And that's why church is so important. Because here we interact with old friends and with newcomers alike. I'm going to do just a little plug for name tags today. It is the easiest way for people to know who you are. You can go sign up for one back there. You may have one sitting back there. But if you wear your name tag, I will remember your name, and that will make both of us so happy. Church is one of the best places in the world for intergenerational community. And yes, sometimes people are messy. Not everyone is our favorite, and that's okay. It's good for us to interact with all sorts of people. To practice tolerance and patience. White writes, "Unfortunately, tolerance for humans in real life is like a muscle, and without use it atrophies until we are trapped in a vicious cycle. The less we interact, the harder it feels. The harder it feels, the more we avoid it. Soon the friend who talks too much isn't worth our time. The neighbor's small talk feels like an assault. We start cutting people out of our lives for being people." The second thing is that our culture in particular places a really high value on safety, a litigiously high value on safety. And our values of safety often conflict with our value of independence, especially for older adults. If older adults aren't safe at home, if there's a risk of falls or an inability to do all the activities of daily living alone, we want to put them into care. But as Gawande writes, when care homes are responsible for their safety, a lot of personal freedom is removed from a competent adult. You can't eat that because you might choke. You can't have dessert because you're a diabetic. You can't drink alcohol because you might fall. You can't lock your door because it might not be safe, we might not be able to get in. Gawande notes that independent living places have proliferated in the last 40 years, by providing both some level of care and community while holding on to that super important ability to make basic choices for ourselves. In independent living, you get to lock your door, you get to eat what you want to eat, you get to go to bed when you want to go to bed. That's really important for most of us. We value that. In my experience, some of the happiest elders I know are those who moved into good, independent senior living places before they had to. If you move too late, you don't make friends, you don't take advantage of the activities, and you end up in that worst of all spaces, being lonely while surrounded by people. Or you'll wind up like my great Auntie Margie. We had to put her in a nursing home at about age 95, when her blindness and general frailty meant that she wasn't safe in her senior living apartment anymore. She didn't like it because, as she said, "It's all old people here." She also, at 93, going blind, refused Meals on Wheels because that's for old people. I said, "Auntie Margie, if you don't get to be old at 93, when do you get to be old?" But still, if I had my choice, I would probably rather be like her mother, my great-grandma Reynolds. She lived in a duplex with her daughter. She watched Perry Mason and read her Bible every day. She pruned her roses at 93. She and Auntie Margie would often eat dinner together, and they'd take turns cooking. She was a Christian Scientist, and so she didn't go to the doctor, which drove my Auntie Margie kind of crazy. Still, she lived to be 93 and died of a massive cardiac event, walking and caring for herself with a little bit of help until the day she died. May we all go that way. Gawande writes that aging is so different now because modern medicine is allowing so many more of us to live past the infections and childhood diseases and accidents and chronic conditions that killed so many of us just 100 years ago. He said it used to be that the thing went like you're born and then you kind of live along here on this plateau and then something crisis happens and you die. And now we live and we do this and we go down and we do this and we go down and we do this and we go down and then we die. Because the challenge is that while modern medicine is great at curing infections and managing chronic conditions and preventing childhood diseases, it hasn't made great strides in stopping the aging process. Funny thing. This means we live with more pain, fewer teeth, more arthritis, weaker muscles, and a host of other conditions that mean that aging isn't just getting to live longer. It's a series of trade-offs. Andy Rooney, who I don't think I've ever quoted in a sermon before, writes, "It is paradoxical that the idea of living a long life appeals to everyone, but the idea of getting old doesn't appeal to anyone." Except maybe Joyce. One of the most meaningful activities for me in seminary was an exercise we did in my pastoral care class. We were asked to tear a sheet of paper into 12 pieces and to write down 4 people we loved, 4 senses, like sight or hearing, and 4 activities we really enjoyed. And place them all face down and scramble them. I'm going to give you a moment to think about that. 4 people you love, 4 senses, 4 things you love to do. Now take away 4, she said. Now another 2. And 2 more. And 2 more. This is aging, she said. There is no one right way to age well, but it is helpful to think about what we want and what's important to us. Joyce shared with us today some of the things that matter to her and what she hopes for in retirement. After my mom died, My dad had some serious health issues, and he was lonely. I wanted him to move into a senior living place close to me, but he didn't want to share walls with anyone. There are apartment people, and there are mobile home people, and we've always been mobile home people, Marcia. And so he moved to a 55 and over mobile home park in Beaverton. It works for now. He can still drive, he can take care of himself. I go over and do his vacuuming sometimes. And he has more of a community around him, which was really important to me and to him as well. He still goes fishing with his friend John in Tillamook. He's bored a lot. He really misses my mom. But it's an okay life, and at 84, he's pretty grateful for it. We will keep exploring the topic of aging next week in our service on what does it mean to live well. In the meantime, I want to mention our ELM group, End of Life Matters. This group meets monthly to discuss items related to death and aging. They're teaching a drop-in class every fourth Sunday of the month called Date with Death Club. This month, in a couple of weeks, it's hospice, palliative care, and end-of-life documents, oh my. There's another one in January that Sally and Dolores will be teaching called Aging, Better Than the Alternative. They also host our memorial service receptions, and you can contact Sally Betzer for more information. Alex Witchell writes, "The older I get, the more I see that there are these crevices in life where things fall in, and you just can't reach them and pull them back. So you can sit next to them or weep, or you can get up and move forward. You have to stop worrying about who's not here and start worrying about who is." May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.